Hi there, it's Elaine Hamilton Grundy from the Reiki Center, and today I'm doing a video for a great question that came through around dealing with negative judgments from clients when they're actually paying you for a Reiki session. So the question was, have you ever had this happen to you with a very disgruntled or low energy client that actually they start to question the payment because they become angry or negative, perhaps due to past issues coming up, or they don't feel that they've benefited from the session, so it's not worth the fee that you've asked for. Now, I have to say this is a great question, because obviously you are going to come across this where you will give someone a Reiki treatment and they won't benefit, and then at the end they're paying you. So, or in one case, I had a case whereby, this was awful, whereby a client came to me who was gifted the Reiki session by his girlfriend. And during the session, he had a huge healing crisis and triggered a migraine. Now, he'd actually come to me for relaxation, and he ended up leaving with a migraine. So it was really not cool. And on top of that, his girlfriend had only gifted him one session, but because he couldn't manage the migraine, I ended up saying to him, well, you better come for another couple of sessions. So then he ended up coming back and having to pay for more sessions. Now, I have to say at the time I felt awful, but I also couldn't just give him free sessions. Like, that's just not the way that you can operate a business, and it's not the way that you can operate with your own time, just giving sessions every time someone has a healing crisis or has something that comes up that they're not expecting. So I think the most important thing to make sure that this doesn't create ill feeling or difficulties is to set it up right at the beginning correctly. So what that means is, when you first start to introduce Reiki, you don't overpromise, or you set an expectation that Reiki will harmonize. And as it harmonizes and balances the system, one of the things that might happen is a release, or bringing up of old stuff, or, like in the question, if it brings up past issues. And so if you frame this before you even start, and they are aware of this, then it means that if they have a bad reaction, then you can remind them of the conversation you had before the session started, which was Reiki is going to balance and harmonize. And that doesn't guarantee it's going to be comfortable. Like, when you balance something, you write it. And often that does require some kind of release or some kind of bringing into acknowledgement, particularly if it's a past trauma, or if it's a past event that has created some ill feeling, even in terms of relationships and things like this. Or if they come and they've had a lot of suppressed emotion, it's more than likely that stuff is going to come up. Now, as Reiki people, we know this, we accept it, we work through it in our own time. But when it comes to clients, they may have a certain expectation that Reiki is going to be relaxing and calming, and it's going to take away their problems. And this kind of magical thinking is very common, where people come and they just expect you, almost like they have a feeling that you're going to take the bad energy out of them. So it is really important to set up the expectation right from the start and make sure they understand that actually the energy is coming into their bodies so that they harmonize. And if they're ready, there may be a release. But it's also to reassure them that if they are having a release, it's because somewhere in their psyche, they are ready for that. And normally, like, even, it was interesting, even this poor man who then had to come and pay me extra sessions, by the end of 3 or 4 sessions, one, his migraine was under control. And 2, he actually said to me, I have realized through this process that I have a lot of unresolved issues to look at. Now, that to me was an amazing insight that he had. And so in the end, I actually felt that it had been very worthwhile for him. And I think he would agree with that. But obviously, as you're going through the process with someone like that, who basically came in thinking it was a relaxation gift and ending up having to shell out more money and also go through a whole kind of releasing process and a lot of pain in the process. It's not ideal, but also trusting that when people come to Reiki, it's because they have a certain readiness to have Reiki, or they wouldn't be in front of you. And if you have explained all this and they're still getting on the bed and they're still giving you consent, and this is also another reason why we never give Reiki without permission. Because if you sneak up to someone and you give them Reiki, well, one, you're not going to charge them for it, right? But two, if you undersell it or oversell it or overpromise, that's really on you. And so it's kind of aligning what the expectation is with what the reality is. And the reality with Reiki is we can never really tell how the body is going to respond to the energy and how it's going to do its own healing. So that is not something you can ever promise, that you can never promise a client that they're going to feel better after a Reiki treatment, because you don't know that. And, you know, it's like all kinds of things, different things can happen. But one thing you can say is that Reiki is a balancing movement of energy. So it is moving the body towards more balance. And depending on how out of balance and out of whack the body is, it's going to go through a process. Now, if people are unwilling to go through that process, or if they're fearful or scared of turning up old emotions or traumas, I would say do not give them a Reiki treatment. That's not a very open client, and you don't want to put yourself into that situation. So hopefully that kind of works. The other thing also, if this question is coming up and there's a concern around what would happen if a client suddenly got really angry and refused to pay, also to work on your own ideology around what Reiki should and shouldn't do. Like if you also have something in your mind that Reiki should only do good things, then that is going to kind of come back and bite you in the bum, in a sense, because you're going to start putting that ideology out there. And then when it doesn't come back like that, you're going to fall into a little bit of difficulty. Sometimes, to be honest, I've also decided, okay, what's worth and not worth fighting against. So if somebody was really, and I have to say, I've actually never had this, but if someone was to outright say that was not worth it, I am refusing to pay, personally, I'd probably just let it go. I'd just say, okay, you know, that's your decision. If it happened a lot to me, I would definitely look at that as a pattern that maybe I'm putting out there. As I'm talking, I'm trying to think about whether it's ever happened to me, and it's really not something that I can pinpoint. The most awkward was this client that unfortunately was gifted this treatment. But it's not one of those things that happen, because in general, if somebody comes for a Reiki treatment and you've explained it honestly, and you've been upfront with what can and can't happen, then in general, people are you know, they understand. The other thing to also look at is the amount of money you're charging. There is a certain correlation between the more money you charge and the higher the expectation. Now, that's obvious, right? If you're charging $50 for a Reiki treatment, there's going to be a certain level of expectation of what they get out of it, versus if you're charging $500. So the other thing I think is to also come into your own resonance of what is a fair exchange. Now, if you are charging something that you honestly feel is a fair exchange of your time, of the Reiki energy, then even if they don't feel it's worth it, you will feel it's worth it, and that will be enough. So it's also checking in on the pricing, making sure that you're not charging too much. You know, that normally we say it the other way around, but there is something to that. I've had times where I've whacked up my prices and it just hasn't felt right at all, and I've actually dropped them again. So I've come into that over the years in myself. And I've had lots of people tell me that, oh, I don't charge enough, whatever. But actually, it's not about what other people think. It's about what you think and what you feel in your body is the right energy balance, the right energy exchange. Okay. I think that, well, actually, the flip side of that, I'm going to add, the flip side of that is just to make sure that you're not undercharging. Because if you undercharge, then your expectation and your client's expectation lowers. So actually, a weird counter thing happens whereby you end up, having okay sessions, but you could have better sessions if they were more engaged with it through this financial exchange. So I think that the payment thing has something to do with the mix, something to look at. And finding your way through that is a bit of a minefield. It is a bit trial and error. And I think finally, there's an area to look at for yourself, particularly if you're new to Reiki, as to your own trust in the process. So if you are really solid that when you give someone Reiki, there is an amazing thing that happens because Reiki is present and is being active in the body, and you can kind of build that trust over time, then you also never get that concerned. Because the other thing is that sometimes you end up treating a client and after an hour they haven't felt anything at all, and they look at you like, well, I didn't feel anything. So forget about a negative reaction. They didn't have any reaction. Then as a beginner, you can sometimes feel quite kind of like embarrassed even that because you don't have 100% faith or trust in the Reiki yourself. So then it does kind of project out. All I can say is that that's something over time that you'll just get over, because you'll just see, for so many people, it has such a profound impact that every now and again, when you get someone that comes in and has either a negative impact or no impact, it's just part and parcel of the process. And you don't try and predict it, and you don't try and understand why that person didn't have any reaction, that person had a negative reaction, that person had a great reaction. It all just becomes their business. It's not your business how someone else responds to Reiki. Your business is really about building the trust in yourself that, one, you're giving a perfectly fine Reiki treatment, and two, that they are going to use the Reiki as and how they wish. And really, that's not for you to decide or force or change, right? There's nothing you can do anyway. So your job is to really just hold yourself, making sure you're doing your practice, you're building your own trust, and that you're giving as good, clean a treatment as possible. Now, what a clean and good treatment means to you, I've actually covered that in quite a lot of other videos as well. But we'll go on and we could talk about that more as well in coming videos. Okay, well, I hope that answers that question. And keep the emails and questions coming in. They're always very good because they kind of trigger inspiration in me to do videos like this, which I think help more people. So yes, thanks very much. Thanks for watching.